question is, you yourself identify as a Palestinian filmmaker.
Yes.
But the area of the Palestine, most of the Palestine are living outside the world of Palestine. So how you describe the term Palestine identity? Is that of a cultural identity or of a geographical identity?
Palestine, I identify it as a culture, of course, as an identity. There are many Palestinians around the world, and many of them are in exile there, and a lot of Palestinians are living in Palestine under occupation. But Palestine has been fragmented, and because of the Israeli occupation, almost 1 million Palestinians were displaced from their original towns and villages in Palestine. So they live in refugee camps in the surrounding countries like Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Egypt. So these are all Palestinians, even though some of the generations have been born in exile, but we all identify ourselves as Palestinians. What brings us together is the sense of belonging to a land and to a culture and to a dream, which is called Palestine.
So the Israelis, they were being subject of a years-long oppression, like the Jews. And it's after that oppression they found a place somewhere they can live peacefully. And the countries surrounding them are not so happy with their being in there. And so I think they are fighting with the Palestine because of their insecurity. So how do you define the so-called nationalism?
Listen, the creation of Israel is a colonial. They colonized Palestine, and we need to make a distinction, I think, between the original inhabitants of Palestine. Before 1948, it was it's a society where there were Christians, Muslims, and Jews living together in one in Palestine and in the region as well. It's multicultural, multi-religious. But Israel was a creation when there was an occupation of a land and a myth that was untrue, because they were saying that this is a land without people, for people without land, which is completely untrue. Palestine was already inhabited by people of different religions, and they were living happily together. With the creation of Israel from the West, it was just like other countries were colonized, like South Africa. It does not mean it's a solution, to a problem that was created. Like, it's not our responsibility. We have not. The Palestinians were not responsible for the persecution of the Jews, and it was very unjust to impose a colonial conquest on a people. So that's my response, and I think now, after so many years, the only solution really is to have a state where everyone has equal rights.
So you believe in nationalism without a boundary? You believe in a nationality without boundaries?
I believe that we have to live together. That all people, whether Israelis, Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, or Jews, should all have equal rights and live in peace, but with justice for everyone, and no discrimination, no racism, no occupation. This is the problem. It's not. The problem is that Palestinians are under occupation. They're being attacked daily. They're being dispossessed from their land. There's illegal colonies and settlements on their land, and this is not. It's recognized by the whole world and the international community and the United Nations. They've all. There have been many resolutions asking Israel to to stop the occupation and to dismantle the settlements and to allow the Palestinian refugees to return. So this is the solution that they need to respect international law.
So these Israelis, they only have one thing in the mind, to make a Jewish country. But inside the Palestine, there were PLO, Hamas, they were fighting with themselves only. How far you can stand and uphold for a Palestinian identity, a nationality? How far you will be successful in that?
I think when you look at history, that on the long term, occupation and injustice does not last forever. And I look at other examples, again, South Africa and apartheid, discrimination. In the end, after hundreds of years, they abolished apartheid and people are living together. Same in India, the occupation and the British occupation of India, it ended because of the people were resisting occupation, and this is their right. And for us Palestinians, it's our right, recognized by the world, and to resist against illegal occupation of our land. So the solution one day has to be that the occupation has to end, and that the people of all religions and nationalities even have to live together on the same land. And that is the only solution, really.
See, it was very surprising for me to know that the 50% of the Palestinian filmmakers are women. So actually in a war-affected area, the women are suppressed more, and their freedom of expression is more suppressed than anyone else. So how come this? See, in India also there have been women who were writing against the war and all these things, but they were using a pen and paper to express their sufferings. And the cinema itself is a male-dominated industry. And how come these much women in the Palestinian film industry?
I think Palestinian women have had to become strong because of what they are going through. So you find women more and more participating in all fields, and especially in the culture and arts. And film is an example. When I started making films, there were not many women. As a matter of fact, I think I was one of the first women filmmakers in the 80s. But with time, more and more women are finding in film a way to express their reality and to be creative and to be strong, because the film and the camera gives you power. Also, it's an empowering tool. So I think women are attracted to that fact because it allows them to express themselves and to talk about the human side. That sometimes I think women bring another angle, a human angle to films that we don't see, especially not in the male-dominated media or news. So it's a reflection, I think, of the society, the Palestinian society, because women are very active, despite the fact that they do suffer discrimination. Like women, there's an idea that women in the West are more free, but I don't think that's true. Even when you compare figures, when you look at Hollywood, for instance, there are only 6 or 7% of women who are directors, filmmakers, which is surprising. It means, and also the women in the West, they do also are discriminated against, but there's a lot of focus on the fact that the Middle Eastern women are more oppressed more. But because of oppression, and this is maybe the most important, I think, point, oppressed people, it's like a challenge. They have more a sense of resistance and challenge, and it pushes people to express themselves, and I think that's maybe a result of the fact that there's so much injustice and oppression and the challenges. It pushes women or encourages women to take a more active role.
So almost all of your films were on women's and children's perspective, and I have heard that the researchers saying when you look through a woman's perspective, you will dig deeper and you will see a lot of other perspective. What made you to take a woman perspective or children perspective in your films?
With children, I found it was an amazing way to look at through children's eyes. To me, I was very fascinated by that idea about how do children see their surroundings and reality, and to me, what's fascinating is their imagination, and it's such a contrast to see the imagination in the children's world when you compare it to the reality they live in, especially the difficult realities of, for instance, the refugee children in the camps. And that, I think that gives me a lot of hope too. So it's a way of showing that humanity and that creativity and that imagination and hope through children, and also allows me as a filmmaker to be more creative. With women, it's it's a world I understand well because I'm a woman, and it focuses on the daily life. Women allow you, they also are very open with their emotions, and to me, it's a world that I feel that I can show being a woman filmmaker too, and it also communicates a very human message because women are very much, life and even the birth and the children and all that. There's such a strong connection, and also there's a lot of injustice, even for women. So I want to show that, and I want to show the strength of women, not just the suffering of women, the solidarity between women, and the kind of resilience that women have, and also what helps them to resist and to fight against the injustices around them.
So how did you decide that your medium of expression is film? I was growing up. When I was growing up, I had this kind of questions and looking for something something that to do that would make an impact, something meaningful in my life that would really a profession that would have be able to express everything that I was seeing as a Palestinian, and also as a woman, and also as someone who had a lot of artistic kind of inclinations and feelings, and I found that in film it's a combination of all that. It's a very powerful medium. I walked into a class when I went to visit my brother, who was studying in the United States, and I walked into a film class, and I found that I was completely blown away, and very. It's like falling in love with something that I found in it such a powerful medium to be able to touch people and to affect them, their hearts and their minds, and to become, and also it's so creative. So being a democratic country, women in India face a lot of problems, and to be a woman director, it is something else. So what were your problems faced by you when you decided to become a film director?
I think becoming a director is challenging for anyone, whether it's a male or female, but more so for female, for women, because it's especially in the beginning when I started, it was such a male-dominated field. So many times it's hard to. There's certain cinematographers, camera women, it's rare, in the beginning it was a challenge and even not well accepted. So it's women had to prove themselves, and I was one of them. You know, to prove that I could do it, and I had to prove more that I could do it better. You know, it's not just competing. You have to prove that you can do it well, and you can do it even better. You know, so that was a challenge, and I think that's the only way, really, through your work, to prove that you know, and that gains respect. You gain respect by the quality of the work you do. But the camera also gives you a lot of respect when you're filming and you're holding a camera. It empowers women too, and I think that it helps break through certain stereotypes and they see you maybe as they don't look at you just as a woman. They look at you as someone who's that they can trust, and that. It's a struggle, you know, like anything. But
see, after your studies in San Francisco, you had an option to stay back there and to be a part of the Hollywood, the big film industry. Like most of the other Palestinians do, you can migrate there. So what made you to come back to Palestine and to picturize the story of the suffering Palestinians?
Yes. Well, I was very anxious to come back to Palestine, and Lebanon too, because I live between Beirut and Lebanon and Palestine. I had no interest really to stay in the United States afterwards, because I feel the stories that I want to tell are the stories that I feel strongly about, and that's Palestine. And also I'm interested in the world. It's not just Palestine. And I'm not interested in becoming famous or becoming successful. It's not in Hollywood, and I don't think I had even that. I don't think I would have necessarily become in Hollywood. But I'm more interested in the stories of people and around the world in Palestine, much more than a comfortable life or kind of that never attracted me. And so that there was no question in my mind, you know, and I'm never regretted any. And I think to become successful, you really have to start from your own culture, your own reality. To become even universal, you start from your community, and you have to be real to your roots and community to be able to make an impact in this world. It's not about melting in or becoming one of many, you know. And it was a need for me, and I think also we need more people to be able to tell our stories, because there's so much kind of stereotypes and misunderstanding, you know. It's up to us, the filmmakers, to show the human side that people don't get to see.
See, most of your films are only about the Palestine. Why only Palestine?
Palestine, and also a lot about Lebanon. And when I was studying also before, I did some films in Latin America. So it's not, but Palestine mostly because there's injustice. That's why, you know, I feel, and it's a reality I know, and I want people to see it. And I want to be able to, because I have the opportunity through film, you can reach millions of people. So I feel that that it's something, my responsibility. But it's not the only thing I can do. I can do, you know, I can make films anywhere, because I understand. I think you know, you can understand humanity. It's like they're universal stories everywhere. But it's, I think you should focus on what you know best. And that I feel the Palestinian reality is something I know, and something I that needs to be told.
The Palestine has having a mixed culture. Both Palestinians and Israelis are living there. So when you make a films on the life of Palestinian, so do you think how far you have done justification to the Israelis who are living in Palestine?
I think it's important for Israelis to see stories about Palestine, because there's many things they don't see. For instance, to give you an example, I made my most recent film, 3,000 Nights. It's about Palestinian women prisoners within Israeli prison. And this is a reality most Israelis don't know or don't really want to know about. So it's important for them to see that. Many Israelis also make films about Palestinians because it's their responsibility as well to end the occupation of Palestine. They need to understand Palestinians as human beings and not only as the enemy or someone that they can oppress and occupy forever. They need to understand them as a people, as an equal people. This is important. So it's important for films about Palestine to reach an Israeli audience, to create awareness, and also to encourage people to change their perceptions. And there are a few Israelis, quite a few, who are, and especially artists, who support the Palestinians and who want an end to occupation.
See, there are Israelis living in Palestine also. So have you ever tried to look through the perspectives of the Israelis who are living in Palestine?
I keep saying, Israel is occupying Palestine. It's not up to the occupied to justify the occupation. It doesn't make sense. It's like saying,
See,
that the Indians should empathize with the British colonialists and see through their eyes and justify. It's kind of does not make sense to me. But I want them. I want to be human and open, and I want them to see the humanities, and of course.
There will be common Israelis now who are not so pro-Israel.
Yes, I was saying that there are, and those are the people that should will be our where we have to live together, and we have to understand, of course, each other, and there's more responsibility on the occupier to understand the occupied and not the other way around, because there's a wrong that's being done to the Palestinians. It's not the other way around. The Palestinians have done no wrong to Israel. The Palestinians have done nothing, really. They've only defended themselves. They've resisted, and this is their right. And there's no question about that. I don't have to explain it or defend it. It's their right. It's our right to resist against occupation. It's our, right, recognized by the world and the United Nations. So I'm very comfortable, not comfortable, but I'm very convinced of that. And I think there's no question about that. And many Israelis, they support the Palestinian right to freedom, and they understand that that occupation also dehumanizes the Israelis themselves. And they are very upset about that, because now there's more and more. It's becoming harder, and there's less tolerance, and they're afraid also of Israeli society becoming very. They want change as well. So it's benefits everyone, really.
So your film career started with non-fiction films, and
yes,
it's ended in a fiction film.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the major difference actually the 3000 Nights having lots of non-fiction elements than a fiction film. So what were the differences you see in the fiction and non-fiction?
To me, 3000 Nights, the fiction film I made, is a continuation of my work as a documentary filmmaker. It's based and inspired by a real story, and the characters are all inspired by real people. And to me, but I felt that it was important to tell a story and to recreate through fiction the real stories. It's a different process, but at the same time there are many connections, and I also tried to film it to give an impression that it's happening for real, and some of the actors actually were former prisoners So it's not very far from the reality, but at the same time there's a lot of poetry and a lot of I tried to use the kind of a style that's also poetic, not to break kind of the harshness of the reality. So fiction allows you also to explore more possibilities, creative possibilities. There's more flexibility, and you can control maybe more than in documentary. In documentary, you have to follow what's actually happening. You know, it's with creativity, of course, as well. But with fiction, you can mold, shape. You can shape the material. You know, the film the way you imagine. So there's more maybe work on the imagination and creativity than, and I wanted that possibility, and I wanted to work with actors was a challenge for me, you know, and I find that it's another step in my I like with each film to try new approaches and to use a new language. So I don't like to repeat myself, and I felt that I had to move into new areas.
So what actually drew you to that story?
What took me to make 3000 Nights was a story I had heard from a woman I met in Palestine, who told me how she had given birth to her child in an Israeli prison. So that what really touched me, because she, it was, you know, the story she told me remained in my mind for years, and I felt that because I felt so strongly that I had to make it as a fiction, and I began interviewing other women and did a long research with women prisoners, and especially mothers who had their children in prison. And I think the idea of a child growing up behind the walls, you know, was maybe the key that really kept, you know, made me want to make this film.
So your experience as a documentarian, how far it helped you in the research of this film?
I think it was very helpful because I did a lot of research as I would, you know, like almost like a documentary approach. And I think the experience of all these years filming, making documentaries in Palestine and Lebanon, it really gave me a lot of perspective and understanding of the subject, and also meeting so many people who have been through prison and other, you know, all this was in my mind when I was writing the script. You don't write from, you know, you don't just get inspiration from yourself, it's from reality. And having worked so long in reality, really, I had all these already in my mind, so it was a matter of putting it all on paper first and then in a film. But these are all images I had seen before. I had seen and felt, and it was almost as if I was in this prison myself, you know. When I wrote the script, the prisoners told me, it's like you were with us. How could you express that? I said, it's because I'm listening to you. I feel it. I can feel it. Your feelings communicate to me. It's like me being with you. It's like I heard the same sounds and saw the same, you know, bars and images.
See, why do you think the prisons and the prisoners resonate more of the Palestine stories? Why do you think the prisons and the prisoners resonate more of Palestine stories?
I think the prison is a very strong symbol and metaphor for the condition of Palestinians under occupation. To me, prison is like a microcosm of Palestine, because Palestine under occupation is as if it's in prison. So all Palestinians, there's a feeling that you're inside a prison. And if you look at Gaza, for example, it's like a concentration camp. It's the biggest open air prison in the world, really, because people are not allowed to leave. There's borders, like walls. Palestine also there's a big wall surrounding Palestine, Palestinians, their checkpoints. Everything is controlled. You're like in a prison. So it really resonates. Prison really resonates in Palestinians because they feel it. They feel they're not free. Every Palestinian feels that they're imprisoned because they have no freedom. So it's a way of telling the story of a whole people, but focusing on one story, really. And that's how films are. You tell one story, but it really represents the story of a people.
See, do you think that the socio-political and the war of the Palestine shaped your perception or changed your perception of filmmaking?
I think it had a very strong impact, for sure. It's normal, because this is growing up Palestinian and just knowing that there's an injustice and seeing it with my own eyes and experiencing wars, war after war. And my films have all been made in times of war, that's what, and occupation and resistance too. It's not just suffering, but, and I'm proud to say my people have resisted and they continue to resist, because if you lose that, you lose hope. And that shaped my personality. I feel I'm part of that sense of resilience and resistance. I'm part of that, and I have a tool that I can tell those stories. So of course, I embrace that, and it's part of my it gives me, it's my identity too, So I feel that shaped me and will continue to and help me become more universal at the same time. It's interesting. It's Palestine, I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's for anyone in the world. There's a connection. Wherever I go, even I was once in the Amazon in Brazil, to the indigenous people, when you say Palestine or in Ireland or even in India, I'm sure, they feel any person who's oppressed will feel connected. This is because they understand it's the same kind of struggle. Oppression is around the world. It's the same, almost. But you can empathize and understand immediately. You create immediate connections, and they trust you more because they know. When you're Palestinian, it means you're part of the oppressed people in general around the world. You're one of them.
So I have heard that there are lots of checkposts in Palestine,
yes.
And if they identify you as a Palestinian, you have to strip your dress, and so the outer world accept you more, and you are not accepted in your country itself. Mm-hmm. How do you feel?
I feel, I feel angry, of course, and it's a challenge to expose this injustice. And at the same time, what makes me happy, in a sense, is to see there's so much solidarity with the Palestinians around the world, with people. It's not necessarily always governments. Some governments don't support Palestine, but the people in general, anywhere, everywhere, I notice there's a kind of empathy with Palestinians, and they don't accept they don't accept the conditions of what the Palestinians are being subjected to. But there should be more, I think, more pressure and more action.
So you have been
to end this.
You have been showcasing your film all over the world.
Yes.
Do you think that the films and the film festivals helped the outside world to change the perception about the Palestine?
Yes,
how
I
far
do.
It is helpful?
I think films are a fantastic way of telling us, telling us human stories, because that once you able to communicate the humanity, you can change people and you can create awareness, and even sometimes it motivates people to do amazing initiatives. And I've had many examples of people who come out to me after the screenings, whether it's in a festival, and my films have been shown on broadcasts on dozens, maybe over 100 televisions around the world. It reaches millions, you know. You can really touch people who don't know and who become aware, and and who become feel connected and want to do something. So there have been beautiful kind of reactions of people who have decided to come visit Palestine or visit the refugee camps, to do educational projects, even music. In Japan, for instance, there was a famous Japanese musician, after seeing one of my films about children in the refugee camps, Children of Shatila, he decided to donate musical instruments to collect all the pianos that he could in Tokyo and musical instruments to send to the refugee camp, because he felt the children were so full of life and imagination that they would be fantastic musicians. And this is one example of many, you know. It's I think it's people are, you know, this is the way really to make change. It's one of the ways to make a positive impact and create hope and connections.
So in India also, apart from the film festival, documentaries won't have its place in big screens. Mm-hmm. They are just limited to CDs or the television screen. What is the condition in Palestine?
Excuse me?
So in India, apart from this film festival,
yes.
documentaries don't have a space in a big screen.
Mm-hmm.
They are just limited to CDs and television screens.
Mm-hmm.
What is the condition?
No, I think it's a bit, there's more space for documentary in Palestine, and because of there is a possibility to show documentary films on televisions and even on the satellites, the Arab satellites and also the international ones, because it's there's an interest. People are interested in showing this, you know, in showing what's going on in Palestine. And also there's many initiatives, like there's the mobile cinema that I know people, they're my friends who travel, to have a mobile cinema unit, who go from village to village and school to school, and they show the documentary films and even some feature films. There are some festivals as well, and we don't have such a difference, fiction and documentary. You know, if you make a good story, whether it's in documentary or fiction, it has a good chance of reaching an audience. Documentaries are very much accepted, but you need to create alternative distribution. You can't give up. You have to keep trying new ways, and I think now there's a lot of acceptance for documentary more than before, you know, because they have to be well made. When they're well made, you can really. And I'll give you one example. For example, I'm happy that the new film I made, 3000 Nights, the fiction, has been chosen by the Ministry of Education in Palestine to show in all the schools. I think this is fantastic. It's better than any kind of distribution. It was shown in theaters, but when you are able to show it to all the students, it's young people, it's such a fantastic, you know, it's a fantastic impact. And as a filmmaker, it means my film is reaching a new audience, and not only the people who go maybe to the cinema or to the film festival. It's like a wide, and that's the people. I care about my film reaching the widest platform, not just to the selected few.
Do you think that the documentaries say a better history of the Palestine than the Palestinian history books?
Yes, for sure. Well, I'll tell you, one of the problems with the history books is that they're controlled, and there's a lot of interference always to rewrite the history, and usually it's the winners who write the history. You don't see the history of the people. usually in the history books. It's very much the official line and the pressures, you know. So with films, there's liberty really to tell history from the people's point of view. So I find that film is a way of writing the history that has not been written, the unwritten history, the history of a people. So and it also documents the memory, you know, what's going on, you know, after 10, 20, 30 years, you see it in films. So it's the history of, the history of a people. Film is really a chronicle and history of a people from the people's point of view.
So you said that you don't have any strong government. You also said that you are subjected to strong censorship laws. So who is censoring, who is imposing this censorship in your film?
In my films, I think the censorship is more political, and a lot of it has to do with the Israeli kind of control, like in certain places when sometimes they try to ban some of my films, and this has happened recently, once in Italy and once in France, but they were unsuccessful.
So the outside world is making
yeah.
No, your government is not.
No, because no, it's more it's Israeli imposed censorship, but they were unsuccessful, and because it created a solidarity, the opposite effect, and a lot of publicity for the film. And now I have the film 3000 Nights has been in theaters in France for 6 months, non-stop, which is amazing. It's really an achievement. I'm very proud of that. You know, it's not easy to keep a film for 6 months continuously in the film theaters and reaching a diverse audience. So it's a struggle. It's not easy, but I think censorship is always backfires. It's you know, when any kind of censorship is very stupid, really, because it creates more challenge to oppose it and more awareness. People become more interested to see, you know, when there's an attempt to censor. It's ridiculous, but it's.
You might have witnessed studies protest against the ban.
Yes.
Is there a space in Palestine for these kinds of protests?
Yes, of course. People are always protesting. It's in our blood. It's like you're born protesting. You're born. So yeah, people. That's one good thing, is that people that don't accept to be oppressed, they're always protesting, and that's what makes also the women so strong. They have to fight all the time for everything. You don't accept, never accept defeat. And that is one of my main mottos in life. Don't accept to be defeated. Even if you don't win the battle now, on the long run, you'll win the war.
See, one of the Malayalam renowned director once said that the cinema is the art of director only. So how far this is applicable to a documentary? Because you can't control what is happening in front of you while you are documenting.
Yeah, I think it's an art. You said art of the director. I think no. The director is like the maestro, the one who conductor, of an orchestra. There are many creative elements around. There's of course there's the visual, there's the sound, there's the editing, But the director brings it all together, and there's the script, of course, depending, how much of it is scripted. But there's a vision. The director holds the vision, and that's what really is the most, maybe the key, is the vision. You're not recording. In documentary, it's not immediate. It's not It's not. Does not mean you're documenting exactly what's in front of you. There's a lot of poetry and vision that goes into that, and understanding. It's how you frame that reality, and your point of view. So it's yes, the director. It's in the end, yes. I agree to some extent that it is the vision of the director, and not. And you can. I mean, it's true. There's a lot of events happening, but you can shape them through your vision. There's nothing called objectivity. You know, it's all subjective in the end. Whether it's documentary or fiction, it's very subjective. So the vision of the director is very important.
So in the documentary, for a far extent, you're objectifying the real people. So have you ever faced an ethical issue?
Yes. Ethical issue, for instance, when you're filming in a war zone and there's bombardment and wounded people in front of you. The question in my mind was, what do I film or do I help these people? It's a huge question. That's one, for instance. Another big question, and I really think that there's a lot of ethical responsibility, is towards the people that you're filming. Especially if you're filming like children or people who you can have an impact on their lives. It's very important to give something in return, not just take their story and run. You know, you have to be able to use that story to have a positive impact on the lives of the people you filmed, and that's very possible. You know, there are different things. In my experience, I found that through helping them through their education was one way of making an impact, a long-lasting impact on their life. So that is that's something tangible that can be done, or some kind of you know, if you're filming problems, you have to be able to find also ways of kind of supporting the people you're filming. You know, those are the ethical kind of questions that you face, and also how you represent that reality. That's another question. Not to manipulate or not to use people, and I'm very much against using people, filming them in a way that they do not, you know, like using them for your own. There are plenty of ethical questions.
So most of the filmmakers start their career from a short film and then to documentary and then to fiction. This is the usual path.
Yes.
So are you going to take the usual path?
I don't know. Nothing I did was very usual, but I love documentaries. To me, documentary and fiction, it's not such a big difference. I wish I could also do animation. I love to try new things. I've never made a short film. I don't like short films myself because I feel that if you're going to put so much effort, you should make something that's, you know, if you're going to tell a strong story, you have to, you know, why not make it a bit longer? It doesn't have to be so short.
Do this time constraint is a problem. You can say a good story in 15 minutes also.
Yes, but with 15 minutes, where is it going to be shown? I prefer to make it a 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. That's my personal... But with short stories, you can be very creative, and some people use it to learn. I never made any short films, but they do say, if you want to make a long film, you have to start with a short film. And it makes sense, because you have to learn. You can't just jump into a you know, big, huge fiction film with many actors and a huge crew. It's good to make smaller scale films first. I agree. Of course, it's normal.
Most of your films are the foreign co-productions. This foreign co-production, did it help in the distribution of the film?
Yes, definitely. I think so. It helps in the distribution, and it helps you think of a wide audience. You're not just making a film for yourself or for your immediate community. You're thinking about your film being understood and reaching a wide audience. So it's in your mind, you know. And I think it's good. Except when there's interference. In my case, I refuse anyone to interfere with my work. But it could be negative sometimes when a co-production, they try to influence the director. But that, I don't subject myself to that. I see it more as a positive vehicle of reaching a wider audience.
See, this IDSFFK have a lot of meaning, like the banning the film, people being protest, and you being a Palestinian filmmaker who have a long years of stories of oppression. How do you think the people in Kerala accepted your film? What was their reaction towards your film?
Yes, you know, fantastic. The audience in Kerala is very. They're very educated in cinema. They understand, and India in general. I know people, they love cinema. It's a second religion. I know that. And I was in Goa before. People are so warm. You can feel them breathing and reacting with the film as it, and even sometimes emotional, crying, I could feel it. And then after the film, immediately they came to me, and I was a young woman, hugged me very tight. She squeezed me, and she was trembling. I could feel that she was so moved. And maybe she didn't know about Palestine before. It's not about that, it's about the human story, about touching people, about making them feel something. And then a man came to me and said something very interesting. He said, "I can't believe this film was made by a woman," And I thought that was so funny and so spontaneous, but also a bit sad, because it's like there's this impression that good films
are made by men only.
Are made by men only. But so I asked him to say it again on the microphone, and people were reacting. And he said, "Yeah, but I'm a Malayan man," or something like that. But it just shows you that we do have to prove ourselves as women. And I was very happy with the reaction, and lots of people watching all my films. So it's fantastic. I feel people really appreciate, and the messages of my films and my people are very reacting really, really.
See, let me ask you an out of record question. Like, India is getting weapons from the Israel.
Yes.
And are you ready to take an Indian co-production in a Palestinian film?
Of course I would. I feel very connected to India. It's not, I don't know about I think the politics of a country changes, but the people don't change. The people do not change, but the interests of the governments do change sometimes. To me, India, I'm thinking of Gandhi. I think of India as a people who are very proud, people with a long civilization that I feel connected to, and that's what I care about. It's not about the deals that are being made or the immediate kind of interests.
So, do you think that the Indian freedom struggle have inspired the Palestinians?
Of course, the resistance in Palestine during the Intifada, especially the uprising, it was a peaceful. Kind of a resistance without weapons, and this is directly influenced by Gandhi and power of the people, and civil society. It's Gandhi's ideas and thoughts and vision influenced the whole world. It's not just and Indira Gandhi was someone who supported very much the Palestinian struggle and all of the Indian leaders. So I respect that very profoundly, and to me that's the real India.
So you have been traveling almost all the short film festivals and international film festivals. So how do you judge the quality of films in here?
The judge, I think the qualities are really high quality, quality of films, and overwhelming. There are over 200 films in the festival. The films I've seen and the Indian films I've seen are very well made and diverse. They're different. They're not all the same. That's impressed. I'm very impressed, and I'd like to see more. And I feel sad a bit that I don't have time to see them all. So I'm taking the links and the connections with Indian filmmakers to see their films later at least.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
I think I talk too much. You'll have a lot of work to do to...
That's my pleasure.
Especially in the beginning, we talked a lot of politics. Maybe you can
sure.
Focus on the film question and leave the political questions for later.
Yeah, sure.